Hey folks, this is Torin. On April 11th, SNL aired a sketch called Beastomorphs, an Animorphs parody. The following Tuesday, I posted a satirical in-character reaction video. In that video, I used clips of the original sketch. I was cognizant of how much footage I was using and how I was using it, but you already see where this is going. I uploaded the video, it passed YouTube's initial copyright check. I made it live, and like 20 minutes later, it got globally blocked by NBC. No point in complaining, but I'm disappointed and a little embarrassed. So I took a few days away, and I'm trying to make proverbial lemonade out of this. I've ended up completely redoing the video from scratch. The claim on the first video flagged almost all of the content that I used, including clips that were as short as 3 seconds. I've personally never encountered a claim that strict, so I'm assuming I can't safely use any of the original video. So that's one big compromise in this video that I think is otherwise an improvement. It uses still images of the sketch only. I just want to say that I'm incredibly grateful that Animorphs fans, and surprisingly often non-fans, seem to like these silly projects that I do, and I love this fandom so much. Now, in spite of my frustration with how that first upload went, there's something really funny about what got claimed and what didn't, which I'll talk about in the Afterward, along with some of my thoughts about the show announcement itself, for those of you who are interested to stick around. So here we go, take two. So I was hanging out in my meadow this morning, minding my own business, trying to get something to eat, and these ATVs and a Chevy Tahoe show up, and there's two game wardens, a Forest Service guy, and a reporter. And at this point, I'm thinking either somebody's dead or more aliens, because why else would you come looking for me like this? But instead, they say they want my thoughts on this new TV show that they announced. And also, they did a sketch about us on SNL last week. And the first thing I said was, an Animorphs TV show? They did that already. Nobody watched it. Why now? Okay, actually, that's not quite true. The first thing I said was, what the hell are you doing in my meadow? Get out of here. And that's why they brought in the Forest Service guy. So, they kind of don't like me, living there. So the thing is, if I'm a bird, legally, they can declare me a nuisance and geotag me or sterilize me and, with a little bit of paperwork, just shoot me. And if I'm a human, I'm technically not allowed to live in the forest. So, you know, they thought it would be a really good idea if I came in and recorded some thoughts for them. And realizing they had me by the short feathers on this one, I agreed. I did ask if they tried Marco because he loves to get in a studio and talk about his opinions, and I guess he's got some publicity problems right now. I don't really follow it. But anyway, SNL. I'm not too familiar, but they got me up to speed on the drive. I have heard of Ryan Coogler. He's directed 5 movies, all been nominated for awards, 4 of them Oscars. But I've got to say, the TV production company that he co owns, Proximity, that's not the same thing. Like, he hasn't written or directed a single episode that they've produced so far. Not a bad thing, I just think maybe some people are confused. They see Coogler's name on this project right after Oscar season, and they think that he's making the show, and not necessarily. I like that they did a documentary because, Animorphs, we really happened. Now, X-Files, I understand why they want to bring that back, but as far as Animorphs goes, I can admit it, even though we saved the world 25 years ago, our moment's passed. Anyway, SNL, let's check out this sketch.
We're just 4 normal teens living in the suburbs.
I like how they shot it in 4:3. TVY, closed captioning, stereo. Yeah, that's what analog TV looked like when I was watching it, back in the scoop with Axe. If they really wanted to commit to the bit, they should have shot it in standard definition. As a hawk, I noticed things like that. Also, that's not what our school looked like, but it's almost exactly what it looked like on that TV show that we wish they hadn't made. And I just gotta say, I think that TV show got like barely 20 episodes. It only aired for like a year and a half. It was on Friday nights for half that time, and then Sunday nights, the two worst time slots. I just don't get who the sketch is for, because who remembers this?
But we do have a secret.
Okay, this is another thing that stood out from the TV show. So it seems like every time there needs to be a fight or someplace where they're sneaking around, it's pretty much always like in an abandoned warehouse. They'd have you believe the alien invasion took place almost entirely in a garage. In real life, most of our battles were actually outside, sometimes in space.
We transform into animals to battle evil aliens.
It seems like somebody actually watched the old show. They were either familiar with it already and now they're writing for SNL, or else they watched it to prepare for this sketch. They reproduced the frame dragging effect when they run across the screen. A rooster. Aw, the head turn. With the hair. That actually makes me kind of sad. And they recreated that effect where they shuffle the same photo of an animal at like 3 different zoom levels with a brightly colored overlay. The original show loved to do that. I think it was maybe actually an epilepsy hazard.
But we always transform back in time for dinner.
The hard part is our homework.
We're the Beastomorphs.
The fact that they had multiple characters do the voiceover instead of just Jake is actually an improvement. I don't think a lot of people know this. The original show, despite its short run, had 3 different versions of the credits. What they did here was closest to the final form of the TV credits, and the voiceover is actually an improvement. We had a better theme song, though. Once again, I just don't understand who is watching SNL in 2026 that is going to appreciate this. Now, I notice there's only 4 of them. Of course, we all know there were 5 humans and 6 total, but one's an alien, and there's, me. There's potentially one problem with these 4 humans versus what we really looked like. I'll let you figure it out. I'm not so hung up on that because this is a parody and they're limited by the regular cast they have, but if they're going to do a real TV show, it's very important that they get this right.
I think you've seen the last of me, but I'll be back! Good job, gang.
All right, so the big bad laments his defeat and teleports. The cartoonish evil is right. I'm not sure who that's supposed to be. Like, that's definitely not Visser 3. Now, I heard when they were making that first show that they wanted to do Star Trek-style aliens. Humans, basically, with rubber foreheads. But they wanted to be historically accurate with the Andalites and Hork-Bajir with results. And because of that fiasco, the Taxons just don't appear in that show at all. Which those of you who've studied history, of course, know the Taxons ended up being very important. I do like Coleman Domingo's energy. No idea if this is like a stealth tryout for Visser 3? Now, this has to be an accident, but this character he's playing, he could, and maybe I'm crazy here, he could be an Ongatchik. When Jake and Marco took Axe to his first movie, they took him to see a Star Trek movie. And when Axe saw Worf, he commented it resembled an Ongatchik female. Now, we never met the Ongatchiks, but when Jara Hami told me his people's story, I learned that the first hosts the Yeerks ever infested off their own planet was a small fleet of Ongatchik minstrels, traveling space minstrels. Now, I don't want to make light of anybody who died, including some people who were very close to me, but I do find it funny that this species that brought half the galaxy to its knees started off with like 100 three-legged monkeys and a disoriented D&D party consisting entirely of bards. and it almost worked. That's very funny to me. I noticed they're using barnyard and pet store animals, and I think at least one is fake. The original show did that too. This just shows you the difficulty of telling our story. In real life, we morphed a lot of apex predators, a lot of bears, but also a lot of bugs.
We said that evil alien Chumungus back to
The villain's name is Chumungus.
Uh-oh, it's 6 p.m. My mom's meatloaf is waiting for us.
Mom's meatloaf, I don't know what the deal is with that. So far, this parody's really leaning into the idea that we had homework and curfews and stuff. And I mean, that was true in the very early days. But you know what? Their grades started to slip almost immediately. And then eventually, the Chi started playing us. A lot of people don't know about the Chi. Don't go looking for them, but they're around. Yeah, lots of academic dishonesty going on. Of course, I mean, the other 4, I was in the woods with Axe. I miss those days. Yeah, that's what the morphing looked like on the show.
Nice. And my hair didn't even get messed up.
Okay, to the extent that these characters are a direct reference to anyone, that's gotta be Jake, but the hair thing is wrong. The clothes are hilarious. Sometimes it feels like the old show was just an excuse for a 22-minute Gap commercial.
Who's chicken now?
Okay, that sounds like something Marco would have actually said.
This little piggy kicks some alien butt.
That's, other than the pig, reasonably accurate. Kind of hard for me to watch. I kind of feel like I'm being set up here. Okay, both Jake and his cousin were of Jewish ancestry on their father's side, so I really don't like seeing her portrayed as a pig. I don't know how she would have felt about it, and they didn't even think to mention their backgrounds on paper until like halfway through, so the fact that the original TV show didn't take that into account when casting, that's not their fault. And this sketch is a parody of that show, so this is fine for a comedy sketch, it's fine, but I just want to say for a real TV show, this is something you should be sensitive to. When I woke up today in my tree, I didn't think I was going to have to process that. Also, it's funny that they've got her basically in Cassie's clothes. In spite of how different they were, the show treated them interchangeably. It was bizarre, and this sketch, I think by accident, inherited that.
What?
Okay, so the 4th member of the team tries to morph back, sneeze farts, and get stuck. To review, we have the leader with the center part bowl cut, a quippy sidekick who wears a bright red jacket, or is that orange? Hawks don't see colors too well. The blonde girl who, quote, kicks alien butt. Process of elimination. Again, to the extent that anyone is anyone, this has to be Cassie, portrayed as another white girl who sucks at morphing.
Let me guess. My hair got messed up.
Who makes a second joke about her hair? Okay, I'm not a professional comedy writer. I'm a bird. But in a comedy sketch, especially something this short, I think you want to do just enough exposition to sell the premise, which they did really well actually with the credits parody, and then after that, you're either setting up or paying off a joke, right? And you're reusing one already? Did they have alts? How about this? Oh, is there something on my face? Now, that's not a great joke. It's not even an original joke. But it's not a recycled joke from 30 seconds ago. So this never happened to us, thankfully. Nobody ever got stuck halfway into Morph. We got pretty close, twice. Pretty sure it was Marco both times. And something like this, where the idea of a morphing-related burp was used as an analogy, did happen. Didn't happen to Cassie, but they made it happen to her in the TV show because like I said, they saw them as interchangeable. So weird. On a lighter note, I love these backgrounds. Look at this glass brick wall. That's a real 80s and 90s thing. And these hawk decals on the door, that's from the TV show. Actually, from the last episode. That's some good attention to detail. Again, I'm going crazy here. Who was this for? Nobody remembers this.
You can't show up for Mom's meatloaf looking like that.
Brittany, we all know your mom's gone and you just eat chips.
I don't just
Okay,
eat chips.
this character tells this character that her mom is absent and therefore she maintains a crappy diet. Now, in real life, which was dramatized, somewhat accurately in those books that Scholar Tastic put out, if you're familiar with those, you know that her mom was actually around a lot. In fact, she tried to lead a coup against Jake near the end. It was awkward.
Guys, let's put our heads together. Oh, Lizzie, can you just look at the wall while we talk?
Sure. Oh,
You did have to look away a lot. That was a thing.
a little hard to see. I'm kind of looking in two directions at once.
Yes, morphs with monocular vision, another thing we did have to get used to.
Maybe if I sneeze and then fart again, I can change back.
Okay, so they're trying to do like a Konami code, but with bodily functions. I don't want to say we were above this sort of humor. We very much were not. Pooping factored into a lot more missions than you may have thought, but I dare say it was funnier when we did it. So the funny one offers to try to fix her morphing problem by farting himself, and it causes him to shit his pants.
How's it going?
Yeah, that never happened. When we pooped during a mission, it had strategic significance.
Oh no! Tremungus is coming!
Alright, so the big bad reappears. I'm not sure they know the difference between what we did and the Power Rangers.
The great humongous has returned. You Earth kids may have. Oh my God! It smells like here.
We've all been spitting, farting, and burping for the past few minutes.
Why?
That is a great question. Why?
Actually, never mind. I don't care.
No, it looks like the writers answered their own question. One thing about us, it was critical that the real aliens not know who we were, or even that we were human in possession of alien technology. That's why we were so careful never to tell you the name of the town where the alien invasion was happening, and why we never gave the last name of the brother of a high-ranking alien and his cousin, who was the best friend of the only daughter of an even higher-ranking alien and the son of the highest-ranking alien. So the fact that they're just standing in full view of Tremungus... Anyway.
Prepare to die! Beautiful creature.
Okay, the evil Tremungus catches a glimpse of this character, who I guess is Lizzie, in this state, and he becomes infatuated with her. And in the final episode of the TV show, from which they've already done one Easter egg, there is a, frankly, rather cringy shot of this character shimmering. Is this an intentional reference? I mean, what are the odds?
He's just about the most perfect thing I've ever seen. There's just one problem. That frog hand ain't got my thing in it.
I am very uncomfortable with this joke.
Ew, dude.
Now, believe it or not, there were a lot of aliens falling in love with other species, and sometimes even humans. The fact that that happened is, kind of important to my personal history. It was never like this, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but it was funnier.
Sorry, is that like a big deal for you guys? Where I'm from, if you go visit your grandmother in the hospital, your grandma just grabs your thing.
Look, maybe that kind of raunchy edginess would fly on Deep Space Nine, but hashtag not my Animorphs.
So what do you say? You want to be my queen of Chemunga?
Alright, so Tremungus is offering to take her away with him to his domain.
Well, sure beats homework.
They really can't get over that homework thing.
Shoot.
Then Lizzie spontaneously sneezes, Tremungus does a soprano scream, and she's dead. And that's how it ends. Wait a sec. I just realized something. So this guy can teleport. He offers one of the characters a choice to leave the world behind and go with him, regardless of what it does to her planet. Oh my god. He's not an Ongatchik. It's the Elemist. You guys want me to keep going? All right. When I was in the back of that truck, I asked a bit about the sketch, like who wrote it and who acted in it, who was the host this week. The forest ranger let me borrow his phone. I don't have any hard feelings about him wanting to shoot me. I'm pretty sure his job got eliminated during that ride because that's the world we live in now. Anyway, I realized other than Kenan Thompson, who was doing sketch comedy on TV since before the pool ship was in orbit, I don't recognize any of the current cast. But that's okay. Finding and promoting young comedic talent is one of the things keeping SNL relevant. So I thought maybe I should just refrain from commenting much about the show itself, because I don't really know what I'm talking about. But now, having seen this sketch, I realize the irony of feeling like maybe someone shouldn't share their take on a media franchise because they're not too familiar with it. Yeah, I feel no guilt about this. What goes around comes around. So understand, I'm just a 41-year-old homeless orphan, born as a human, red-tailed hawk who's technically half alien, but not in the genetic sense. I do not expect media to cater to my taste. But if you ignore Animorphs for a second, because this didn't need to be Animorphs, it could have been a Power Rangers bit, or like those teen CW superhero shows from the last decade. This kind of reminds me of those. What is the actual joke here? A teenage superhero becomes grotesquely disfigured as the result of her superpowers malfunctioning. They burp and fart and poop themselves about it for a while. Then the big bad arrives, and upon observing the teenager's sudden deformity, he realizes that he's become sexually attracted to them. And the sketch stopped multiple times to remind you that these characters are, in fact, children. He makes a joke about forced genital contact and then tries to justify it by saying it's not taboo where he comes from. I have no doubt that this cast is very talented, and the writers, they pitch dozens of ideas and not all of them go to air, and I'm sure there's last-minute rewrites and executive notes and changes to accommodate that week's host, and then maybe things get cut for time at the last second. I get it, but people, can I go out on both a metaphorical and a literal limb? Because, again, I am Tobias, a bird. This wasn't that funny. I'm glad people are still interested in our story. An attempted nostalgic 80s revival just blew through a decade of goodwill. Maybe we can try again with the 90s. Could be a real opportunity to look beyond simple nostalgia and examine the prosperous and relatively peaceful 90s as a tragic, missed opportunity to address the societal ills of our own making that were right out in the open, using the hidden aliens as a symbol, because that's kind of what sci-fi does best. But no, I'm sure they'll play the dial-up internet sound and then do like a Backstreet Boys needle drop, and they'll expect us all to go, "Oh, the 90s.
Woo! I want it that way.
Ah, chills. Literal chills.
It was number 5. Number 5 killed my brother.
Ryan Coogler, Zinzi Coogler, Sevohanian, I'm cheering you on. Do the best you can with what you've got. That's good enough for you? All right. Little help with the door? Thank you. No. You know what? I'm not done. They dragged me out of the woods and perched me over this soapbox, and I'm gonna poop on it. Because I just remembered something. As out of touch as I am, The last internet sensation that people just had to make sure I saw was this garbage, because it had Hawk in it. You get it? And I can't believe that this is the second time in less than 2 years that I got lured in with nominal Hawk-themed content only to end with an unsolicited instruction about what to do with somebody's painfully artificially drawled out thang. Where's that 2 nickels meme? I know that one. I'm no prude. I know about the birds and the bees. They were crucial to our battle strategy. And I love a good "that's what she said." But people, Animorphs can be funnier than this. We were funnier than this. So this is a call to action. I want everybody. Take this down. I want everybody. Animorphs, auxiliaries, voluntary hosts, Nothlets, Peaceniks, Hork-Bajokers, Taxicondas, Gedheads, idiot teenagers, Andalite bandits, Airists, war princes, Andalongs, Redditors, fanfickers, crackfickers, slashfickers, shippers, shitposters, podcasters, arm fighters, Richard himself, Vegemorphs fans, and Methodists! To show the world what real comedic Animorphs content can be. Now Hawk to it! All right, now I'm done. Thanks again.
What the hell am I here for? I thought I was dead. Is this some Elemist bullshit? Introduce myself. This is Rachel. React to what? It's still running. Oh, they made a new one. Did they make Cassie white?
Sorry guys, me again. Look, we gotta talk meal vouchers, because you scared away all the prey in a multi-acre... Rachel? As promised, before anything else, the funny thing. So the first draft of the video, almost every piece of footage from the original sketch got flagged. There was one notable exception. For the duration that it was up, one thing that didn't get flagged was the montage of all of the burp and fart sounds. And I didn't do anything creative with the editing. I just extracted all of those portions of the sketch and played it as is while I talked over it, and it was fine with that. And it gets even funnier than that to me. I think the part of the video that suffered the most by me not being able to show you the visuals was the positive stuff I had to say. Like, how tickled I was that they basically recreated the credits to the Nickelodeon show from 25 years ago. The more critical stuff I had to say towards the end of the sketch, I think delivering those thoughts over a still image didn't blunt the impact of it very much. Now, I hope I don't have to do this, but I do want to clarify something just in case. All of the in-character stuff about this sketch not being canon, like, I hope it's obvious that that's just part of the joke. The main humor of the sketch, basically the premise that teenage superheroes burp and fart through something and then the big bad shows up and hits on one of the teenage girls. In this case, my impression of Tobias's thoughts do align with my own. I think that's not very funny. Overall, I think it was kind of a mediocre sketch. And that's actually okay. Most things are. Most Animorphs books, I'd say, are mediocre, and that's even grading on the curve of what you'd expect for pulpy children's stories. This book, for example, I think a lot of fans would agree this is pretty mediocre. In terms of the epic war story that Animorphs aspires to tell, it's certainly not very important. And I bring that up because this is kind of the poop-themed book. There's a sequence in the book where the characters are morphed as horses, and the Yeerks are watching them and they suspect they may in fact be bandits in disguise. So they're about to get disintegrated with energy weapons, and the characters realize they might convince the aliens that they are in fact real horses if they just poop with no sense of modesty. And it works. The Animorphs poop themselves to salvation. And see, that's the kind of toilet humor that I like. And speaking of toilet humor, the main plot is that they learn there is an alien artifact, and the punchline at the end is it turns out to be an alien toilet. It's a discarded waste module. And there's a line from this book that's relevant. I'm paraphrasing. What's important is not that they have an alien toilet. What's important is that they have an alien toilet. So I can say the exact same thing about this sketch. if you are an Animorphs fan and you've been hoping and wishing that it had some sort of revival and reached a broader audience, what's important is not that SNL just did a mediocre Animorphs sketch. What's important is that SNL just did a mediocre Animorphs sketch. Now, I do want to take a minute to talk about my thoughts for a new Animorphs show a little bit. I know there's a lot of debate about whether the series should be animated or live action, but either way, I firmly believe there is no way to properly tell the Animorph story in a visual medium cheaply. There's a lot of positive stuff to say. Sevohanian was Catherine and Michael's first choice of writer back when that Picture Start movie that never got anywhere was floating around. Well, he's a co-owner with this company. And Ryan Coogler directed Sinners, my favorite movie of last year. I will not give away any details at all for those who haven't seen it, but I just want to say, the way Sinners ends, the person who came up with that, I think that is the right kind of mindset for how to dramatize the ending of Animorphs for a visual medium, if you manage to get that far. So these folks being involved specifically, I think, is real cause for optimism if they have any creative input and if they have any kind of resources. Regardless of what ultimately comes of this TV show announcement, the fact that it's been announced, combined with maybe a small effect from the 30th anniversary being this year and the limited reprints that Scholastic's going to do for those. A lot of people who maybe haven't thought about Animorphs in 20, 25 years, and maybe some people who have never interacted with the Animorphs fandom at all, they're going to run into fans on the internet, and this positivity and inclusivity of the Animorphs fandom that I love so much, I want us to do whatever we can to make sure that's the version of the fandom they find. That doesn't mean disregarding good faith criticism, and I am aware of the potential irony that I'm saying this in maybe my most critical Animorphs video ever. But I think overall, Animorphs fans have a pretty good sense of humor about themselves and about the franchise. Alright, I have a lot of thoughts about what I'd like to see in an Animorphs show, about what I think you reasonably could portray in an Animorphs show. I've learned never to make promises, so I'm not going to say I will do a video on this, but let me know if you're interested, and if there's any interest, I'll do my best. But let me boil it down to this. These are, I think, the two most important things I would want any new visual adaptation of the Animorphs to hit. Here's the hill I want to die on. It has to take place in the era when it was originally set, which is also when it was written. Animorphs only makes sense from the instant the internet went mainstream to 9/11. I would love to see a piece of intelligent, well-written fiction set in that era, provided that it balances sentiment with 30 years of hindsight. I am a 90s kid. It was economically prosperous, and it looked like technology might change our lives for the better. It was also the era of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and 3 Strikes legislation, and the war on drugs, while opioid companies legally caused at least 100 times as much damage as we thought recreational drugs were doing. I just finished reading Demon Copperhead, and this really had an effect on me. Apparently, 1996, the year Animorphs debuted, is also the year when public American approval for interracial marriage crossed 50%. See, I know that varies by region, and also I was a kid in this era and rose-colored glasses and everything, but I don't remember growing up in a United States that was that racist. And now that I've heard myself say that, I realize what a stupidly ignorant thing that is to say, but that's the perception I had as a white, middle-class 9-year-old. I'm certain there are millions upon millions of Americans who were alive in that era going, it was pretty apparent to us. The story Animorphs tells, where there's a hidden invasion that's actually not that well hidden, is a perfect metaphor to re-examine that. I don't have high hopes that any Animorphs show is going to actually do that. Especially on Disney. They're really not going to want to promote a show where the punchline is, the Yeerks are symbolic of climate change. And it may be a clumsy attempt to bring this full circle. I think it's really telling that of all the zany strategies the Yeerks used, one of the more effective ones is just having a well-funded community center and hosting lots of family barbecues. I think that has aged tragically well. Also, I think it would be really comforting to have a series where it turns out there is an easily understandable answer to why everybody's suddenly crazy, and it actually is because of brainworms. To paraphrase the governor of California from Book 51, okay, that's a relief. Aliens we can fight. So that's the main thing I'd want to see in an Animorphs series. The second thing, which is more artistic than social. Animorphs is obviously an ensemble piece. But if you have to assign one person to be the protagonist of the series, who is it? The way the books were written, it's Jake. And that's also the most intuitive answer. He is explicitly the leader. Any new adaptation has the opportunity to take, I think, a better and more interesting approach. It's Tobias. You don't have to change very much, if anything, from a narrative perspective to support this. I think it would just be a good guiding principle for anyone making the series to consider. Alright, that's enough of that. Thanks, folks. Let me know if you actually want a hypothetical TV show pitch video. Take care.